A critic is a legless man teaching others how to run. Now, legless men should stop teaching us how to run. One of the biggest challenges that the liberalization of the media space has thrown up is that it has given a platform to ignorant people to posture like very knowledgeable people. I said I'm talking about the socio-economic contribution of the Pentecostal movement to the nation. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. That's why we are. We are in the arena. We are in the trenches of hurting humanity, reaching out to help. That's what we do. That's what our lives are all about. We are in the trenches, okay, with hurting humanity, reaching out to help. It's a pleasure to be with you here again today, and I'm going to be talking about a very critical subject. And it's not just for this episode or this broadcast. Over the next several episodes, I'm going to be dealing with a very sensitive issue. And what I'm going to be talking about is the socio-economic contribution of the Pentecostal movement to the nation. Okay, the socio-economic contribution of the Pentecostal movement to the nation. I'm not talking about spiritual, impact or spiritual whatever. No, I'm talking about socio-economic contribution. And I'm going to be looking at it from about 7 or 8 different areas. Okay, about 7 or 8 different major headings, major, areas, major territories where we'll be exploring this particular subject. You see, one of the biggest challenges that the liberalization of the media space has thrown up, and when I talk about the liberalization of the media space, I'm talking about the advent of new media, the advent of social media. It's a good thing. It's giving everybody a voice. But the downside, one of the downsides, is that, you see, it has given a platform to ignorant people to posture like very knowledgeable people. So you see people who are very ignorant about a subject or a topic, they come online, they posture like experts, like people who are very knowledgeable about the subject. And unfortunately, all they spout out is ignorance. A second challenge of the liberalization of the media space with the advent of new media, of social media, is that a lot of people who have an agenda suddenly have a platform to promote their agenda without disclosing their agenda. Okay? They can promote their agenda without disclosing their agenda. They don't have to, they won't tell you that, look, it is said that it that comes to equity must come with clean hands. So they won't say to you, look, I have this agenda that I'm pushing, that I'm promoting, this my own interest, whatever. No, they will just come out like neutral commentators, like objective commentators, but they have an agenda that they are promoting, and they confuse people. A third challenge with the liberalization of the media space and the coming on board of new media, of social media, is that a platform has been created for people who are triggered by base emotions. People are triggered by anger, triggered by hatred, raw hatred, triggered by bitterness, triggered by envy, triggered by jealousy, triggered by myopia. A platform has been created for them to vent. Suddenly they have a platform to vent. During the days of the traditional media, the old traditional media, not everybody, number one, you can't even vent everything. There has to be some level of restraint and modicum, some level of restraint. They can't allow you to vent the basest of human emotions raw on their platform. No, that was going to happen. Okay? And if they don't think you are knowledgeable on the subject, if they don't think you can be said to be an authority on the subject, they won't give you that platform. Okay, that speaks to the first challenge I mentioned, which is that ignorant people are now posturing as knowledgeable people and experts. Okay, on social media platforms. During the days, in the era of the traditional media, if you are not seen as an authority, they won't give you that platform to talk and to voice out, So, even though the traditional media are still culpable when it comes to the second challenge of people promoting agenda, and it's very, very evident today. I don't know whether at this time I should be mentioning this. It may detract from what I'm doing here, but there is a major news. In fact, the biggest example is the United States of America, where media organizations have unhidden agendas, okay? Unhidden agendas, including one that was so bad that, a particular election, they spouted out all kinds of falsehood that when they were taken to court, they've had to spend almost $1 billion in defamation settlement, almost $1 billion, okay, because they were just spouting out falsehood, okay. So these are some of the challenges that we have with the liberalization of the media space. As good as the liberalization of the media space is, because that's why I can talk to you now, there has been some downsides. Now, I said I'm talking about the socio-economic contribution of the Pentecostal movement to the nation. And I'm starting with employment. Employment. You see, employment is probably the biggest economic concern when it comes to human beings. It is expected that every adult should be gainfully employed. It's seen as a bad thing, a terrible thing, both on a personal note and a societal note, a national note, when adults who are able-bodied and even disabled are not gainfully employed. Okay? So, employment is a big economic concern, one of the biggest, and even more so for developing countries. More so for developing countries. Now, our adversaries and critics, when I say adversaries, they see themselves as our adversaries. We do not see them as adversaries. I'm using the language of the way they perceive us. Okay? We don't see them as adversaries. We see them as people we are sent to reach. But they see us adversaries. They see us as adversaries. Okay? So our adversaries and critics launch vicious attacks, brutal attacks against us, presenting a false narrative that we are useless parasites that contribute nothing to the nation. That's the narrative they present. That the Pentecostal movement, the gospel movement in Nigeria, that we are useless parasites that contribute nothing to the nation, except for just pretending that we are blessed, helping some people spiritually. Now I am confronting them. They have attacked us brutally. Now I am confronting them with brutal facts. Yeah? I'm confronting them with brutal facts, and I want to see whether they will have enough integrity to own up that they have been hopelessly wrong. They've been terribly wrong, and that they will show character, okay? Or whether they will dig in and show a lack of character. Now, I'm going to start this matter of employment as one of our biggest contributions to the socio-economic development of Nigeria in this context, in this particular case, with two of our biggest employers of labor. There are two churches in Nigeria that are our biggest employers of labor in the Pentecostal gospel movement. I'm talking about Winners Chapel, also known as Living Faith Church, and the Redeemed Christian Church of God. Now, my data here is not up to date. It's not 2026 data. It's a few years old. Okay? Who knows? Peradventure, the numbers has gone up significantly from the number I'm giving you here. But I can only work with what I have. Okay? And the data I have for a few years back, Winners Chapel has over 35,000 employees. I repeat, over 35,000 employees. Let that sink in. I want it to sink in. If you are one of those adversaries of our movement, one of those critics who has launched brutal tirades against us, I want this to sink in. Okay? Over 35,000 employees employed by a church. The figures I have for Redeemed Christian of God is that church also employs more than 35,000 people. Now, I agree that they don't pay the salaries that oil companies pay or that banks, top banks pay. But you will agree with me that the federal government does not pay either. The federal government of Nigeria does not pay the salary Shell or Chevron pay, or the salary that GTB, Zenith Bank, First Bank, and the rest pay. Okay? But these churches pay above government salary. They pay more than the government. They do pay more than government. They are not owing salaries. Thank God now state governments no longer owe salaries. As a matter of fact, I remember watching on live television. It wasn't a report. I watched on live television when one of Nigeria's biggest exports to the world, our former finance minister, the delectable Okoja Iweala, was saying at a time that the federal government was having challenges with paying federal salaries. The federal government was having challenges with paying salaries. I watched on live television. And traditionally, we know in Nigeria that, in the past, state governments had had problem paying salaries. State government in Nigeria, they've had problem paying salaries. Okay? And sometimes if state government have owed 6 months salary, some 1 year, in fact, don't even talk about local government, don't go there. Now, we thank God that that is no longer the case because since the removal of fuel subsidy, the states, the local government have become very liquid, okay? And they're able to at least discharge their obligation to their workers as at when due. Thank God for that. But I'm just saying that there was a time in the recent past in Nigeria when state governments struggle with payment of salaries. But these churches have never owed salaries. They don't owe salaries. They don't. They don't owe salaries. I want that to sink in. In addition to that, I wanted to know that we are talking about churches where staff have access to things like pension that government staff have. Okay, our pension, have access to health care, and particularly in the case of Winners Chapel, a lot of staff have access to official accommodation, and some of them furnished. Some of the accommodation provided by Winners Chapel is furnished. You just go there with your box and enter. Okay, now, like I said earlier, yeah, they don't pay what oil workers or banks pay. And when I'm talking about banks, I'm not talking about contract staff. I'm talking about those full-time staff of banks. But you see, let's put it in perspective, because you see, you may not, if you don't put it in perspective, it may not sink in the way it should sink in. Each of these churches employ, each of them individually, not collectively, individually, stand alone. Each of these churches employ more people than any business, any company, any organization in Nigeria that is private Any private company, private business, private organization in Nigeria, except the Dangote group, when you add the Dangote refinery and petrochemical. If you remove the Dangote refinery and petrochemical, they actually employ more people than the Dangote group. Because you see, until the coming on board of the Dangote refinery and petrochemical, the figure I have for 2024 from the Nigerian exchange, that's the data I have for 2024 from Nigerian exchange, Dangote Cement had 21,639 staff. 21,000 plus staff. That's what they had. And Dangote Sugar had 2,000 plus staff. So prior to the coming on board of the Dangote petrochemical and refinery, Dangote Group probably had about 30,000, no more than 30,000 staff. Okay, so at that time, these churches had more employees than even the Dangote Group. But of course, with the coming on board of Dangote refinery and the Dangote petrochemicals, now is the largest private employer of labor in the country. Now, you need to get even deeper perspective about this subject we are dealing with. Nigerian banks, the biggest ones, they don't employ more than 10,000 people. They don't employ more than 10,000, and I'm talking about First Bank, Zenith Bank, UBA. They employ about 10,000 people. About 10,000. Okay? Now, apart from Access Bank that employs almost 9,000, and GTB that employs over 5,000, All other banks employ below 5,000. All of them employ below 5,000 people. Okay? Now, outside of these banks, another large employer of labor in Nigeria is Julius Berger, the construction giant. And that the construction giant Julius Berger has about 10,000 employees. And then next to that, you talk about flour mills, which has over 5,000 employees, 5,000 plus employees, flour mills of Nigeria. Now, my research shows that there is no other Nigerian business, company, organization that has over 5,000 employees, apart from these ones I've mentioned. None. Yet, you have churches having 35,000 plus, over 35,000 people on their payroll. And you are there claiming we are contributing nothing to the nation. That we are just taking. Taking what from you, sir? Taking what from you, ma? Are you the one who pays salary to the over 35,000 employees of winners? And the more than that, the numbers of RCGA, I didn't get a specific number, that's why I'm not quoting specific number, but the research I did show indicates that they are more than that. Are you the one paying them? You employ them, you pay them? So when people start touting things up and down, now, none of the oil giants, not Shell, not Chevron, not Mobil, none of them employs up to 5,000 people. Not the telecom giants, not MTN, not Globalcom, not Airtel. Okay, in fact, the biggest of the telecom companies in Nigeria, MTN, has about 2,000 employees. About 2,000 employees. Now, I know they pay in the region of oil companies and all that and top banks, but they have 2,000 employees. Okay? Not the manufacturing giants in the country. Because sometimes they say, churches should go and, why can't churches set up factory? They should go and set up factory. Excuse me, sir, excuse me, ma. You see, it's very good. When you are not educated and enlightened, please calm down. Okay? Don't go outside and spout ignorance. Because you see, why don't they set up factory? I'm telling you that the biggest manufacturing giants in the country, none of them has up to 5,000 employees. None. Not Nigerian breweries, not Nestle, not Coca-Cola, not Unilever, not Guinness, not 7-Up, etc., etc. None of them has up to 5,000 employees. As a matter of fact, some of them have just as low as 2,000 employees. Yeah. Not any of the airlines. And of course, if you know anything about, airlines, it's another labor-intensive industry that hires a lot of people. Okay? Now, not any of the conglomerates or multinationals in the country. Now, I'm not taking anything away from these iconic brands in the country. These are iconic brands in the country. They've left their footprints, indelible footprints, okay, on the Nigeria economy. And I salute them. I have a lot of respect for them. But we need to point out these facts to highlight the extraordinary feat of these two Nigerian church giants. Let this sink in. Two Pentecostal churches are amongst the largest private employer of labor in Nigeria. Two Pentecostal churches are among the top 3 private employers of labor in Nigeria. Top 3. So he said, they should have set up factory. Okay, they have not set up factory and they are employing more than the only manufacturing concern now that employs one of them is Dangote. None other. Like we've shown, the highest manufacturing concern in the country that has the highest employment rate is flour mills that has 5,000 plus. Okay, so they have several times the number of employees of the biggest factory in the country. So what are we talking about? And they are not just employing low-skilled workers, low-skilled blue-collar workers, and there's nothing wrong with providing employment for those people. No, please don't misunderstand me. But you see, they are also employing highly skilled labor, white-collar workers as well. They employ top professionals. They employ accountants, engineers, architects, Medical doctors, yes, they do employ medical doctors, lawyers, estate managers, professors. Professors, they employ professors, PhD holders, okay, teachers, up to master degree holders, administrators, pilots, yeah? You heard me well. Pilots, they employ pilots, IT experts, security experts, creatives, and so on and so forth. They do. They do. I'm talking about the Pentecostal and the gospel movement, particularly the top two employer of laborers in our movement that I'm highlighting now. Now, apart from these two giant Nigerian churches, some of our other leading, and I use the word leading, some of our other leading Pentecostal gospel churches employ thousands of people. They do. Thousands of people. I'm talking about churches that have hundreds of thousands of members all the way to millions of members. Yeah. Our churches that have hundreds of thousands of members to millions of members, some of them employ thousands of people. Okay? Because, many of them actually operate universities. They operate universities. You know how much staff you need to run a university. By the way, lest I forget, we operate 15% of Nigerian private universities. I'm talking about our movement, the Pentecostal gospel movement. We operate about 15% of all private universities in the country. Okay? So these people employ all kinds of categories of people. Okay? Then outside our leading churches, even what I would call our mega churches, I'm talking about, churches that have tens of thousands of members, I'm talking of members between 20,000 and 100,000. Okay, I refer to them as mega churches, just for the purpose of my own study here. They employ hundreds of people. Now, in this regard, I have to mention a church. Because you see, when they bought a warehouse several years ago, all hell was let loose. Oh, they said, oh, what a disaster. What a calamity for Nigeria. When churches are now acquiring warehouses. Oh, what a calamity for Nigeria. It's a warehouse they purchased in Lagos. And all hell was let loose. The criticism was strident and brutal and vicious. But listen to me, sir. Beyond that uneducated emotional outburst, how many people does a warehouse employ? And I can tell you for free that there are few warehouses in Nigeria that will employ more than maybe 15 people. There are very few. Maybe a manager, a business manager there, maybe a power business manager, maybe 2 clerks, and then security men. In fact, most warehouses will not employ more than 10 people. Yet, the church you criticize for acquiring, for buying a warehouse, and you say it's a calamity that the church bought a warehouse, that church will employ several times the number of people the warehouse employed previously. Gospel truth. Okay? Gospel truth. So we need to understand that even our mega churches employ hundreds of people. And then, apart from the mega churches, the one that we just refer to as big churches, I'm talking of churches that have thousands of members, between 2,000 to 10,000, or 10,000 plus, 2,000 to 10,000 plus. I refer to them as big churches. Even they employs tens of people. Okay? Churches, our big churches that have thousands of members, between 2,000 and 10,000. Some of them employ, between 20 people. In fact, some of them will employ as much as 100 people. That I know of for a fact. As I'm talking to you now, I know of for a fact. Okay? Employ as much as between 20 and 100 people. The churches are referred to as our big churches, those with 2,000 to 10,000 members, And what you may refer to as our mid-sized churches, okay, our mid-sized churches, I'm talking of hundreds of members to maybe 1,000, hundreds of members to maybe 1,000 members. Even them employ between two, sometimes, some of them employ between 2 and 10 staff on average. Churches with hundreds of members to 1,000. Some of them employ between 2 and 10 staff on average. And I remember pastoring in Nigeria, in a city in Nigeria, a church in this category at the time, many, many years ago, and we had 9 staff. 9 staff. 9. Okay? So even our small churches will probably employ maybe 1 or 2 people. Maybe 1 or 2 people, the small ones. Sometimes it could be a musician in the church. Sometimes it could be musicians. Maybe the person who plays the keyboard or drum set. It could be a night security guard. It could be the pastor, whatever. Now, as a group, we are one of the largest employers of labor in Nigeria today. And our most ardent critics are the people who have contributed very little. Those people whose pastime is launching vicious tirades and insults against our frontline pastors and leaders should show their own contribution to the nation's economy. Let them show it. Especially in the area of employment that I'm discussing here. Let them show it. I'm waiting for them to come out and show it. I'm referring to those loud critics who make a lot of noise. They should show their own contribution in this area to the nation. Let them show it. Let them show it. Let them show it. Let them show it. They say, we should go and set up factories. How many factories have closed down? So even if churches leave their mandate and set up factories, what is the guarantee that those factories will not close down? Do you know how many factories have closed down, not only in Nigeria? I'm going to deal with this in another study, okay, where I'm going to be talking about economic shift. And we are blamed for economic shift. How are we responsible for economic shift? How is the Pentecostal gospel movement responsible for economic shift? We are not responsible for economic shift. If an industry does not respond properly to economic shift, it will be swept off. And we cannot be blamed for that. But that's not the subject for today. We're going to get to that later on. So all over the world, many factories have closed down. In Nigeria, they have closed down. So if we left our mandate and set up factories, how do you know they won't close down? Number one. Number two, why are you not criticizing banks for not opening factories? Why don't you say, the banks should go and open factories? No, they don't open factories, yet they employ thousands of people. The banks, they don't open factories, yet they employ thousands of people and have contributed significantly to the Nigerian economy. Their job is not to open factories, but to render banking services. That's their job. In the same way, our job is not to open factories. Our job is to render spiritual services, if you care. Okay? That's our job. Now, as critical as manufacturing is as a sector, especially in developing countries, it is not the only driver of economic growth or employment. In many countries of the world, the services sector contributes far more than manufacturing. The services sector, including Nigeria, it contributes far more than the manufacturing sector to employment. I'm not just talking to GDP or the economy generally, to employment. Okay? So, you need to understand that, look, we have not set up factories yet. No manufacturer in Nigeria except Dangote employs as much people as our 2 top churches. Now, in closing, I read something many years ago, and that thing has been with me. It said, a critic is a legless man teaching others how to run. A legless man teaching others how to run. I want to say this. Legless men should stop teaching us how to run. Legless men should stop teaching our movement how to run. And I'm going to close by referring to this world-famous quote by Theodore Roosevelt, former American president. He said, it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles. That's what many of our critics do. All they do is point out how the strong man stumble. Theodore Roosevelt said, it is not the critic that counts. No, you are not the one who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. Thank God we are doer of deeds. Thank God that leave the spiritual side. Leave the spiritual side. Thank God that even in employment of labor, we are doer of deeds. Okay? So it is, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. It's not about that guy. No, it's not about that guy. He said the credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. Oh, we're in the arena. We are in the arena of helping men and women and boys and girls. That's what we do. That's what our lives are about. Helping people. We are actually in the arena. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood. Okay? Who strives valiantly. Who errs. So in closing this particular episode, I want to say this. I read something a very, very long time ago. Very, very striking statement. He said, a critic is a legless man teaching others how to run. A critic is a legless man teaching others how to run. Now, legless men should stop teaching us how to run. Is that okay? Legless men out there, stop teaching us in our movement how to run. I'm going to close by, reading this world-famous quote by Theodore Roosevelt, former American president. He said, it is not the critic that counts. No, you are not the one who counts, Mr. Brutal Critic. No, it is not the critic that counts. Not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles. That's what you are good at, pointing out how the strong man stumbles. But you are weak. At least the man who stumbled is strong, but you are weak, and yet you are pointing out how the strong man stumbles. Or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. At least the doer of deeds is doing something. You ain't doing nothing. At least the doer of deeds, no matter how imperfect, is doing something. And it is better to do something imperfectly than to do nothing perfectly. He said the credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. Come on. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. That's where we are. We are in the arena. We are in the trenches of hurting humanity, reaching out to help. That's what we do. That's what our lives are all about. We are in the trenches, okay, with hurting humanity, reaching out to help. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs. We don't pretend that we are perfect. We don't pretend that there's no place where we err. Yeah, he says, who errs? Who comes short again and again because there's no effort without error and shortcoming. And I dare say the only effort where there is no error and shortcoming is probably the effort of launching brutal criticism and vicious tirade at people who are doing 1,000 times more than you could ever do in your life. It is not the critic that counts. It is not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. Okay? No. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena. Oh, come on. Who comes short again and again because there's no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds. We are striving. We are imperfect, but we are striving. Who does strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause. I'm going to close it there. In the next one, I'm going to be talking about our contribution. Like I said, I'm going to be doing about 7 or 8, various topics like this. And in the next one, I wanted to mention it, but I'm going to keep it. I won't let the cat from the bag. I'm going to talk about another major economic area, major area of social and economic impact by the Pentecostal gospel movement in Nigeria in the next episode. Watch out for it. God bless you. Enjoy Jesus.